Bonjour, je m'appelle Mehdi, je suis DJ. Emric, est-ce que tu peux mettre le logo, s'il te plaît, dans le... Alors, pas chez nous, chez eux. Merci. Emric, est-ce que tu reçois le PC scène avec Slido? Il y a un mot finance au plein milieu. Émeric pour Kevin. Est-ce que là, tu as le PowerPoint? Ok. Émeric, est-ce que là, tu as le mot finance? Là, Émeric, est-ce que tu as la présentation?
I think
Okay.
they can see it on
Et-
their screen. Because when you do the answer, you can't see it.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, let's not do it.
Et là, tu as le slido? Tu as le mot finance, Émeric, là?
Okay, hello. I think we're about ready. Do we have the live streaming ready to go? Great. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's truly an honor to welcome you here today to our event, Landscape Restoration as a Pathway to Peace. And if you stick around to the end, you might get some chocolate, so some incentives to stay seated. So I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Janelle Sylvester. I'm a research specialist at the Alliance of Biodiversity in CIAT, CIAT being the International Center for Tropical Agriculture. I also serve as the land expert for CGIAR's impact platform for environmental health and biodiversity. I'm based in Cali, Colombia, where my work focuses on integrating restoration, conservation, and sustainable land management to build resilient and healthy multifunctional landscapes, which, as we'll discuss today, are critical foundations for peace-building efforts. So I'll be guiding us through today's event, which will explore how restoring landscapes can help to restore peace. A critical topic considering the urgent need to resolve conflicts with both nature and with one another. And we've come together in Riyadh under the theme, Our Land, Our Future, which seamlessly captures the vital role of land in securing a better tomorrow. And this connects beautifully with the theme of the recent CBD COP16, Peace with Nature. Both themes remind us that land is not just a resource. It's the heart of our livelihoods, our resilience, and ultimately our ability to coexist peacefully with one another and with nature. And for me, what these themes represent is a vision in which people and nature thrive together. And this vision serves as the inspiration for today's event. In this session, we'll focus on landscape restoration, a holistic approach that integrates sustainable land management and agriculture into efforts to restore degraded landscapes while strengthening livelihoods. It's about balancing productivity with ecological integrity, ensuring that people and nature thrive together. Forest and landscape restoration is also central to the 3 Rio Conventions, underpinning land degradation neutrality, advancing the targets of the Global Biodiversity Framework, and playing a critical role in climate mitigation and adaptation. While degraded landscapes can drive conflict and displacement, the same landscapes, when restored and sustainably managed, can support livelihoods, strengthen food systems, and bring communities together, making them powerful tools for peace building. So today we have an exciting agenda ahead. We'll have a keynote presentation that will inspire us, followed by case studies that will convince us of the potential of restoration, and finally, a panel discussion that will tie it all together, perhaps even solving all the world's problems in just 32 minutes. But before we dive into all of that, it is my great pleasure to introduce Ms. Cecilia Apira, the director of UNEP's Disasters and Conflicts branch within the Ecosystems Division. With over 20 years of experience in disaster risk reduction, climate security, gender equality, and agricultural development, Cecilia oversees UNEP's critical work on the theme of peace and nature. We're honored to have her here with us today to deliver today's opening remarks. So, Cecilia, over to you.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, it's a pleasure for me to join you today in this discussion, landscape as a pathway to landscape restoration as a pathway to peace, to explore interlinkages between sustainable land management, nature restoration, and peace. One of the things that has become clear in any of the sessions that you probably have all attended, again, is the issue of interlinkage, coherence, integration, understanding that these issues cannot be addressed in isolation. So it's really critical that, you know, whatever we are pushing forward ticks so many boxes of the needs that we have in the world today. And each day, these interlinkages are becoming more and more apparent for all of us as we continue to witness the overlapping shockwaves of climate change, environmental degradation, conflict, displacement. No country is untouched. We also are seeing an increased recognition that climate change, environmental degradation, as they continue to worsen, so too will the underlying conditions and stresses that give rise to instability as well as conflict. Yet, we have been greatly also encouraged, especially again, as I mentioned, some of the sessions we've been hearing in the last 3 days. We are seeing also an amounting recognition of these important interlinkages across the intergovernmental processes. So for example, in Cali, the overarching theme there was making peace with nature, peace with nature. In Baku, the climate peace nexus took center stage with the Baku Call on climate action for peace, relief, and recovery. And of course, here in Riyadh, the link is equally prominent. The Decision 7 addressing the nexus of land degradation, conflict, migration, and yesterday's ministerial dialogue on migration. What all these agendas recognize is that a healthy natural environment is absolutely fundamental for peace and sustainable development. Which is why across all of the work that the Disasters and Conflicts branch in UNEP, as was introduced, nature is at the center of our intervention. Whether we are supporting communities with cooperation on natural resource management or adapting to climate change, drought, and desertification, whether we're looking at building resilience through ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction, or mapping out impacts and recovery options from the environmental consequences of war, we need land to recover, whether we're recovering from climate change impacts, disasters, or conflicts. Land is where we need to also invest our solutions for better tomorrow. Land is where we live. It's where we build our lives, our livelihoods, our culture, our communities, and land is actually where we call home, all of us. Just as much as land degradation and droughts disrupt lives, spark tensions, and turn resource scarcity into conflict, effective land management and environmental governance practices, if they're approached through the conflict-sensitive lens, can actually help us to turn the tide on destabilizing conditions and laying the foundations for sustainable livelihoods and supporting recovery from conflict or from wars, and again, fostering peace and cooperation. What we've seen, again, from a UNEP context, time and time again, is that, in contexts such as Somalia or Sudan, Haiti, where participatory and conflict-sensitive approaches to sustainable land management have simultaneously enhanced communities' ability to withstand climate and environmental stressors, while also laying down the foundations for peace building and cooperation. Just an hour ago, actually, in UNEP, we launched UNEP's new policy brief, Nature-Based Solutions for Peace, which attempts to address precisely these issues that we will be discussing today. It is through these approaches that we build out the evidence base to inform, but also to scale up action in this expanding field and enhance our capacity to approach environmental action and peace building in a coherent, again, that word, coherence, and also in a coordinated manner. If you allow me, I will just take a few highlights from this report that we launched, which I think also has a lot of relevance to this session. One was that restoration can address root causes of resource conflict base, and well-planned nature-based solutions can address issues of equity and equal access to resources, which is critical. It also highlights that equitable governance and participatory planning with meaningful inclusion of local level engagement of communities is a key element in promoting social cohesion. Again, in this session that we just finished, one of the panelists said, I was talking to a 90-year-old about, land restoration and forest management. And he said, yes, of course, I know, I care about that. But if it's a question between a child dying and cutting down a tree, I will cut that down. I'll cut that tree down to save my child. So community engagement and creating co-benefits for the environment and communities is critical. That's the point I'm trying to say here. What we also know, especially if we're talking about pathway to peace, is that the issue of transboundary becomes critical. Transboundary restoration initiatives can be platform for regional cooperation. So again, going beyond the community and understanding that climate change, conflicts, sometimes it doesn't respect boundaries, or those fleeing from conflict cross boundaries. It can create platforms for regional cooperation, trust building, through offering cross-border programming that can deliver mutually beneficial outcomes and enhance prospects for cooperative management of shared natural resources. We need integrated and coherent approaches. Again, I'm using that word, coherent, integration. We need to keep embedding peace considerations in environmental action and frameworks while also elevating the environmental dimensions of peace and security agenda. This dialogue today is incredibly valuable and very much welcome. Let us seize the moment we are seeing across the Rio Trio to secure funding for ecosystem restoration and nature-based programming in conflict and fragile settings. I look forward to hearing examples and insights from the colleagues on this panel and from also your side to increase our understanding of what is truly possible when we think of peace and nature as one, and how we translate what we learned today into targeted action across the different contexts where the environment, land, and peace are very much I can never pronounce that word. Let me just say where they are very much linked. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. Those words really sung true, and I couldn't agree more. And you did an excellent job connecting to the Rio Trio and the life-sustaining role that land plays. So thank you very much. Next, I will pass the floor to Dr. Beatrice Mosello to deliver our keynote for today. Beatrice is a senior advisor on climate diplomacy and security at Adelphi, where she specializes in developing climate and conflict-sensitive approaches that deliver on both resilience and peace. With a PhD in international studies from the Geneva Graduate Institute, Dr. Mosello has held diverse research and advisory roles, including as a research fellow at the Overseas Development Institute in London, a visiting research fellow at the UN University Center for Policy Research, and an advisor on sustainability and climate change to businesses in the extractive sector. She brings a wealth of experience to today's discussion and will be setting the stage with her keynote, Land Restoration for Peace and Security, exploring the evidence and making the case. Please join me in welcoming Beatrice.
Great. Thank you so much, Chanel. What an introduction. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you so much to CGIAR, to the Alliance of Biodiversity International and CIAT for hosting me and us and giving us the chance to talk about actually this very, very important topic based on a report that we also launched just 1 hour ago at another event here at COP16. We have, and I don't know, do you want me to, you doing it, or should I? Thank you. It's just, I always forget to say next slide, so it's great. So we have many examples from all around the world that show us that today's environmental and climate challenges have important conflict and security implications. Not directly, but because they do go and exacerbate already existing drivers of conflict, being competition over access to land or water resources, or by deepening existing inequalities between communities, even between countries. think of the Sahel region in West Africa, where soil erosion and loss of soil fertility, a consequence of climate impacts on water availability, but also a consequence of years of poor irrigation and land management practices, have increased conflict between farmers and pastoralists. And the opposite is also true. We see that where conflict is raging, and unfortunately we see it in many parts of the world, conflict is exacerbating environmental and climate challenges in a vicious circle that threatens the livelihoods and the lives of everyone and each of us, particularly those that already live at the margins. But, and it's a big but, and if we're going home with one key message from my presentation, I would like that to be this one. There's a lot of examples that also show us that restoring land, protecting ecosystems, building climate resilience are all powerful vehicles to simultaneously foster social cohesion, promote cooperative approaches and better relations, and ultimately contribute to restoring, building, or sustaining peace. And as Ms. Pierre already emphasized in her welcoming remarks, we are seeing this focus on kind of the peace-promoting potential of environmental, climate, land initiatives emerging very prominently across the three conventions. We had Peace Day, the last two COPs. We had COP16 on biodiversity being themed around peace with nature, and we're having an increasing number of events that focus on peace also here at COP16 this year. So it's great to see these, and I very much agree with Mr. Pierre's point about let's seize the moment, because there is a great moment there to highlight that land and ecosystem restorations can be powerful vehicles for peace. And of course, in a way, we knew that. There's been 25 years of literature around environmental peace building, right? Looking at how environmental interventions on the ground at different levels can be used as entry points for dialogue, for cooperation, through restoring livelihoods, through providing economic opportunities, but also by kind of tapping into broader political dynamics, broader social relations dynamics in different contexts. So in a way, we have a bunch of literature, a bunch of evidence that is there. What we tried to do in our report, Ground for Peace, Land Restoration for International Peace and Security, was to take stock of the evidence that we already have and complement it with examples of interventions from all around the world that at the very ground level are working in this sense. And Mr. Pierre also mentioned that these dynamics of Land for Peace are very important also at the transboundary level, and this is particularly the focus of our report here, because that's a specific gap that we identified. There's not much evidence on how land restoration, ecosystem restoration can work to bring countries together, to bring also local communities together living across borders that are kind of, their cooperation and dialogue is trapped within broader politics sometimes. So maybe before I get into some of the key findings of the report, let me share that the report was produced by Adelphi and Alpanalytica. Have two of our co-authors here, Mary and Shandor, in collaboration with the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. And it's very much one of the products of their Peace Force initiative, which was launched at the last COP, so COP14, no, 2 COPs ago, 2019. And it serves as a platform for addressing these interconnected issues. So it kind of fosters cross-border collaboration and sustainable land management and ecosystem restoration, and thereby fosters peace and resilience in transboundary areas. So it's been working in Central Asia, South Caucasus, Horn of Africa, Asia, and our understanding is that it's planned to expand in other areas as well. So within this context that we've produced this report that particularly focuses on the how question. How do we go from land restoration, ecosystem restoration, to kind of peace and collaboration and cooperation promotion? And there's a lot of findings from the report. In the report specifically, we identify what we call 5 enablers that look at specific elements that land and ecosystem restoration initiatives have to embed in order to kind of facilitate this transition and kind of enable the peace potential of land and ecosystem restoration initiatives. I can talk a bit more about them later in our panel discussion, but essentially they cover things like a focus on technical and scientific collaboration that can set the grounds for then higher level political collaboration, build the trust and the dialogue that is needed to then move up to that kind of political engagement that is needed to foster peace and to advance peace. Another area, another enabler is focus on capacity development, like really working, you know, on mediation skills, on the skills that the very own beneficiaries of the interventions need to continue the work in the long term. The importance of conflict sensitivity, and not just conflict sensitivity, but really designing interventions with in mind the fact that they need to embed elements that can also advance the kind of peace agenda, social relations, dialogue, of course, depending on the context, and so on. So these 5 enablers that we identified. I think another really important point that emerged across our work is really that it's important to think of process rather than just output. So that when we think about land and ecosystem restoration initiatives, peace co-benefits largely come through the way in which the activities are designed and implemented. So taking into account who is involved, where the activities take place, which benefits from what are the power dynamics, and how our interventions go and influence those power dynamics. And also another very important point that cuts across all the kind of findings and enablers is the importance of conflict sensitivity. Not just conflict sensitivity, but also, again, this very proactive focus on integrating activities that promote peace, and not just in the design, but also in the kind of monitoring and evaluation of our interventions. But again, if you have to go home with 3 key messages in mind, I would like this to be the following. One is that inclusivity is key to ensure that land and ecosystem restoration initiatives promote cooperation and peace outcomes. And it's not just so that we're sure not to leave no one behind, which is very important, but it's also because everyone in the community, in the countries, in whatever level you're working, has something to contribute. And there's already a lot happening that we need to be able to capture and build upon, rather than just going and kind of reinventing the wheel. So very important, this aspect of inclusivity. Another important point is that, yes, land and ecosystem restoration are good starting points, but they're far from being the full story. We need to invest in a wider portfolio of interventions, and for these, we need partnerships. No single agency can do all the work on its own. And finally, very important point that emerges very strongly from our analysis and our report is that we need more and better finance. Finance that is directed to the local level, reaches the local level, where again, a lot of these interventions for land ecosystem restoration, for building peace are happening. Finance that is able to reach the transboundary level as well and promote kind of dialogue and trust building across countries at the regional level as well. Finance that is that can be accessed, and there's a lot of discussions happening, particularly in the UNFCCC COP, the last one particularly, looking at how do we deliver finance at scale with a focus on conflict and fragile context. Very important, and I think needs to be on the front of our mind when we talk about these things. And also, how do we diversify the sources of finance? Because the needs are great, so we need everybody to chip in, also including private finance. And I think as a community, community, we need to think a bit more strongly about how do we do this, with all the kind of checks and balances that need to be in place, but how do we make them partner, how we make private finance partner in advancing the goals of land and ecosystem restoration for peace agenda. I'll stop here, but I very much look forward to engaging in the discussion later and share a bit more from the report and our project experience in general in that context. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Beatrice, for laying the foundation for today's discussion. And absolutely super critical points, inclusivity and finance. I mean, finance underpins nearly everything that we're trying to do, and the integration across partners as well. So yes, fantastic points. Next, we'll move to showcasing some examples of these principles that we've been talking about in action. And we will start with Ken Otiono. Thank you. Who will be sharing his work with participatory rangelands management. Ken is the executive director of the Resource Conflict Institution, referred to as Reconcile, and he leads the coordination of rangelands and pastoralism in Africa, the East Africa Solidarity Platform Community of Practice, and he is co-chair of the Eastern and Southern Africa Regional International Support Group of the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralism. Ken, I pass it to you.
You have my slides. Do you have my slides? Yeah. Okay. Thank you and good afternoon. I'm going to reflect with you a practical experience when we are talking about landscape restoration from a program that we have executed collaboratively with ILRI, where Ba, my colleague sitting here, works with, and the International Land Coalition, among other partners. And some of the critical conversations or the issues that I want to reflect on is why participatory rangelands management is important, both as a tool and as a process when it comes to landscape restoration. Firstly, I think when we talk about rangelands, we are talking about a very large landscape. And the two speakers have mentioned a number of things, two things. I'll pick two things. One, the first speaker talked about something on land, everybody needs land. And when you need land to do something. And in that process, there is demand and there are competitions that happen on land. And when that happens, there's bound to be tension and subsequently there's conflict. So how do you deal with such? And the larger the land scale is, the more susceptibility to conflict. And this we can see, or we have heard and read within the sub-Saharan Africa and within the Sahelian. So the question is, why is this happening? When, again, the complexity or the complication is that when we talk about it, even in terms of the people who occupy it, then we are saying it's very sparsely, distributed. So what is really making this happen? I think the answer is the absence of a framework of sustainable, systematic use of this landscape. And that is why a process and a concept such as participatory rangelands management comes into play. So why is PRM an important process? It is important because people own land, and people have claims to land, and they also have claims to resources within land. And therefore, specific to rangelands, because rangeland supports pastoralism, It then means that the system depends on how people relate with the existing resources they are in. And therefore, PRM becomes a very important process that allows learning to take place through community level implementation. And that is one thing that made the work or piloting of participatory rangelands management from Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, a unique process and a success story. The second thing is that talking about it as a process of planning and managing rangelands, which is community-led, and it can also be supported by government and development experts. And when you talk about organizations such as Reconcile, as a policy and research organization, when you talk about the International Livestock Institute, Research Institute, you're talking about a research institute, and then you're talking about governments. Our work is not to go and tell communities what they're supposed to do, but we appreciate that for millennial years, they have been doing things, and they've been doing them in a particular direction. They've been doing them in a particular way. So what this process then allows is to facilitate, work with them to do what they are doing better and in a more organized way. And as such, PRM consists of three things, which is basically understanding the landscape and the resources therein. Then working in terms of planning the landscape, and then the implementation of this understanding, and then the plan. How does it happen? It happens through collective engagement. Communities participatorily engage, they identify their resources, they map them, and they document them. And it also consists of several engagements with different stakeholders who come to an agreement in terms of how these resources are supposed to be used. And it is done from the community level systematically to where you digitalize this and subsequently migrate it into static maps. And therefore, it becomes a technical process when it comes to the development of a detailed participatory rangelands resource assessment, which now involves a bit of research and documentation. Some of the critical outputs includes a management plan, an agreement on how resources are supposed to be used, defining different management and user zones such as grazing areas, and helps in terms of reduction of degradation and enhances land restoration activities which are established. And lastly is community monitoring process. And that is how it works. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Ken. To that wonderful introduction to participatory rangeland management and its potential contribution to peace building. So for our next case study, we'll hear from Dr. Mohsen Hafiz about participatory water harvesting and sustainable range management. Dr. Mohsen is the Strategic Program Director for Water, Food, and Ecosystems at the International Water Management Institute, which is another CGIAR center, with nearly 30 years of experience as an international expert in water and agricultural systems. Over his career, he has successfully led interdisciplinary research projects totaling over $50 million, addressing critical areas such as climate adaptation, sustainable land and water management, and integrated environmental resource management. So please take it away, Mohsen.
Thank you. Just on okay, if somebody could place this, the presentation.
Just hit next.
The presentation. Okay. All right. Okay. So I will be. I mean, we heard a very interesting story about that one, the rangeland. But here we are talking about from water management perspective, because water is a connector, and particularly I'm here sharing the example of Balochistan, which is one of the most problematic area in the context of Pakistan, due to law and order, and then there is a lot more agriculture sector could play a role for the peace building and everything as a part. So Just to put the context into that one, the Balochistan, the rangeland covers around 79% of the province land area. Also is the backbone of livestock sector, estimating around 80% of the feed for the sheep and goats. But over the period of time, there are many problems are there that has led to the reducing the forage productivity, vegetation cover loss, and soil erosion. At the same time, that when we are talking about the productivity has been impacted a lot by the grazing management practices, low and erratic rainfall, and overexploitation of natural sources. At the same time, there is another thing is about there is a lot more soil erosion is happening, vegetation cover and livestock productivity, and particularly the low water infiltration due to the rock formation. One of the critical areas that in the part of the whole province, there is around 11 million acre foot of water is coming as a part of the rainfall. 10 million acre foot is creating all kind of problem, and then go back to the sea, and only 1 million acre foot is harvested in that one. And that's showing that one there is a lot more impact on that one, but at the same time there is a huge potential to basically make this the Balochistan as a food basket for Pakistan. So what we are running one of the project under the EU revival of water sources in Balochistan, European Union funded, and where we are looking at around the different participatory rangeland management practices for the rangeland rehabilitation. I will share a few examples. One is the how we could restore that from the degraded lands to improve their ecological functionality, productivity, and biodiversity. And what we are doing it, we are just going to the community based rangeland management system and then involving the stakeholders locally and asking them what could be done, and that could be using the native the traditional practices which was then, and how we could adopt on that one and implement it. One of the critical thing is about the water availability. And for water availability, we are building a small ponds and guiding to the farmers how they could have that water availability and how to do it. And important is basically enhancing the engagement of the community with the local government and provincial government so that they will have a better idea, and also introducing the groundwater recharge, which is fundamental. Because as I said, there is a lot more rainfall, but over the certain short period of time, and how we could utilize that amount of rainfall for the groundwater recharge. Another is important is that one we are introducing a controlled grazing as a tool for the participatory rangeland management, where we are looking at around on that one rotational schedule and as well as seasonal adjustment, and making sure that one where in small parcel of land, how we could make sure that we are having a different rotational practices. That's ultimately enhancing the vegetation productivity and ecosystem resilience. Again, when we are talking about that one, the sustainable grazing guidelines, important thing is coming is arid environment, how much water is available, and how we'll make sure that when water is enough available for the other one. And again, that's where it's important is coming on water harvesting structures. It used to be native, that one, the Karez system, which was the many 100,000 years old system, but now that has seriously impacted on that one. And now we are again looking into that one, what we can do and how we could also introducing the native species which were there, and then the native species, and then along with the combination of water harvesting structure, that helping us restoring the land. Sharing the two examples. One is we are looking around the catchment management, holistic system level approach. And in system level approach, where we are going for the micro catchment of the two river basin. And what that means, we are looking around the model and then looking about system level, how we could have a better optimized use of land, water, rangeland, and forests. That's ultimately improving the agriculture and livestock farming system. And under that one, the important part is that one small Karizes, which is an old traditional system, native traditional system, as well as the water retention structure using the small pebbles, building the small ponds and everything. But doing that one, we are introducing a lot of intervention. Getting that one, the remote sensing based data, that's helping us in better planning at the micro catchment scale level. Land use, land cover, also on the catchment management plan, which is built with the community. And at the same time, make sure that the community, whatever we are developing, that plans are not owned by the IMI, but those are owned by the local community and doing the training need assessment based on the integrated water sources, management principles and everything. This is here sharing that one, the Karez system, which is coming it. Another is last is about that one, make sure that one, the planning tools. when we are talking about natural social management assessment, how we could have that one mobilize the community as well as looking around the land use, land cover maps and developing the plans which is talking about not only for water, but integrated land and water management practices, that the quantity and quality is important and also land use according to the soil suitability is another important thing. In that one, we have done we have introduced a nature-based solution based on the spatial data set available from a soil type, rainfall, as well as other things, and then introducing some of the structures like water harvesting, some of the water conservation efforts where we are growing low, I mean that one, the water delta crops, sustainable agricultural practices, rainland restoration, and pollution control measures to improve the water quality, everything. That's what these are the measures that have shown an impact on that ground, and we are working in the 4 catchments, and I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Masin, for bringing the important considerations of water management to the session today. So we have our last case study that will be presented by Dr. Baba Ba on the contributions of local conventions to peace building in central Mali. Baba is a geographer and postdoctoral scientist at the International Livestock Research Institute, ILRI, which is another CGIAR center. And he specializes in land use planning, pastoralism, and governance of agro-silvopastoral systems. He has a PhD in rural geography, and his work focuses on managing conflicts between farmers and herders, restoring ecosystems, and supporting community-driven approaches to land management. And he has both expertise, he has academic expertise and lived experience as a member of Senegal's Fulani pastoralist community. So, Baba, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janelle. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. In advice, apologize my level in English. I'm not come from English country. I'm from Senegal. It's a French country. But anyway, I will try to be very clear, more clear than possible. I'm very happy to be here, share with you some work we are doing in Mopti. Mopti is in central Mali. And this work focuses in contribution of local convention to peace building in central Mali. That's a preliminary funding from case study conducting in the in 3 municipalities in the Mopti region. This presentation focuses in 6 points, but no worry, that is a quickie point. The first point is what does local convention mean in context of Mopti region? And the third point, what is the area of implementation of these tools? And what is the context of implementation, the objective of local convention, and what was the implementation process? And finally, what is the impact of natural resource management in peace building? What does local convention mean in the context of Mopti region? Just to know, a local convention is a tool, it's a legitimate agreement negotiated among multiple actors with the aim of regulating natural resources in terms of control of access, ownership, using, exploitation, and environmental management. There are also tools that reflect on collective commitment, collective action to improving the governance of natural resources and fostering peaceful relation among the various users of natural resources. And finally, that is an agreement that establishes the role, right, and responsibility of each party in use of management of shared space and collectively value natural resources. Now we talk about the area of implementation. As you can see in the map, Mopti region, the Mopti region is in the center of Mali. also in the center of the inner delta, Niger Delta, the river of Niger, is a territory characterized by flooded and no-flooded area, call it Seno in local language, featuring a specific type of pasture, call it Buguche. It is also an area with a diversity of food production system. Like you can see, as you can see in the map, traditional fishing, livestock systems, irrigation agriculture, rainfall agriculture, and Bugucher. Bugucher is is a grass growing in the flood area. Is a particularity grass grows in the inner delta of Niger. Now, this coexistence creates sometimes conflict over access to resources. And now we talk about the context of implementation. This tool was implemented in the context characterized by escalation of farmer-header conflict and growing insecurity, like as you can see in the photo. Fragile political and security context componented by climate challenge. In the context of competition among resource users and increasing tension over resource exploitation, resource like land or water. It is également is also in the context of rise of jihadist movement. As you know, in the Sahel, each country faced to the emergence of jihadist movement and the proliferation of community self-defense group. And the last factor of context is the deterioration of inter-community relationship exacerbated by the heightening insecurity. What is the objective of local convention for natural resource management? The first objective is strengthening collaboration in the governance of natural resources by developing local management mechanism and also reduce tension between different resource users, particularly between farmer and header, by establishing clearly make it livestock corridor. In the Sahel, we have something like a corridor who help pastoral community to do the transhumance from one area to another area. And one of these objectives is also restore Buguche pasture and create income creating activity around Buguche. As you can see in the last photo, is a Burgucher is a specifically grass grows in the inner delta of Niger, and this growth is very, very interesting, the pastoralist in the area. The implementation process will take a long process from the pre-diagnostic, that is a step who help a community to know how many resources, what is the resources who create many more conflict between the user, and from the after the pre-diagnostic, you have also the diagnostic, the participatory diagnostic, the community approval of local agreement, drafting agreement, restitution community return, and the application of the tool. In impact of natural resource management, the impact here we try to say to list the impact of these tools in the multi context. Some of this, the impact of this tool is it creates a social inclusion in the governance of natural resources. He also helps to do the restoration of degraded resources like Bugu, and help also to strengthening of local governance, adaptation to climate and socio-economic challenges, and creating of income generating activity around Burgujer. And the last impact on for this tool is help community to have a peace building by rehabilitation and making of livestock corridor, who permit to reduce conflict, farmer-header conflict, and also increasing in the availability of fishery resources, because when we restore this kind of resources, this kind of gas, he help to the comeback for the fish and help the increase of availability of fish resource and creating of income generating activity. In conclusion, we can say the local convention play a significant role in promoting peace building in central Mali, contribute to conflict resolution and the sustainable management of natural resources by fostering collaboration and mutual understanding among actors, local actors. The convention may emerge as a practical tool for addressing resource-related dispute and ensuring social cohesion in fragile contexts. And finally, he helped to decomplexing relation between farmer and breeder in the Central Delta, contribute to restoring trust between community through a change of narrative, and contribute also to strengthening collective action in the management of natural resources and increasing income by marketing of Bogo. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Baba, and panelists for showcasing these multifaceted experiences to bring us to the heart of today's session, which is the panel discussion, where we'll dive more into these practices, these approaches to peace building. And now I'm very pleased to hand over to Ruby Knife, who will be moderating this conversation. Ruby is the thematic focal point for peace and security with the UNCCD Youth Caucus and is a climate justice advocate and researcher. Her work exemplifies how young voices can shape solutions for peace and security. So Ruby, over to you, and please correct me if I mispronounced your name. Okay.
No, all is good. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward for this interactive panel with our lovely panelists. And please stay with us because we also want to hear from our audience. So I will start with the first question, and then I will give it to our panelists to hear from them and for them to build on each other's answers. So I will start with you. So the question is, can you tell us more about some key lessons or insight from your experience? How can such insight can guide scaling and adapting restoration and SLM initiative to support peace and resilience in diverse contexts? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruby. It's a difficult question to ask me, especially after having heard from our panelists with such great initiatives, like really at the local level and really getting into the depth of working with land restoration to build peace. So it's difficult shoes to fill, but let me try. The report that I presented just earlier on is global in scope, and as I mentioned, we talked to and collected evidence from many programs and initiatives in different contexts. I won't try to pick one or two or present them all. Maybe I'll just share some experience from another project that we've been working on and that I think touches upon all the 5 enabling elements, factors that we identified in the report. We're working with the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE, in South Caucasus, Central Asia, and the Balkans. And there we're very much using kind of this type of land climate projects as entry points, so land and climate adaptation initiatives as entry point for building cooperation at the transboundary level, so between countries in the 3 regions. So 5 key elements that are reflected in a report. One is a focus on technical and scientific collaboration, and very much we use that as a starting point, right? Like bringing together stakeholders, focusing on what are the problems, how is climate impacts, how is land degradation impacting your specific context, what is the evidence, where is the data, starting with this technical level, and then step by step, and here important to emphasize kind of long-term approach, long-term engagement. This building peace, starting from land and ecosystem restoration, is not something that will happen in 6 months or 1 year. It's a long-term process. So engagement is important. Starting that to then build the kind of political dialogue, bring the stakeholders in to kind of create this political will that is needed to build peace, because at the end, peace is also a political process. This dialogue needs to be inclusive, and I mentioned inclusivity before as well. So kind of bringing local communities in, and all the project, all the activities start with local communities living across borders. Being careful, paying attention to who in the local communities, women, young people, everyone needs to be included. All the voices that need to be there. And then kind of bringing these fora together with ministries, with the government level representatives, as well as regional organizations, international organizations that do fund initiatives, do implement initiatives on the ground. Working with already existing initiatives, not reinventing the wheel, particularly those that exist at regional and transboundary level. Making sure that everything we do is conflict sensitive, is aware of the conflict dynamics, is aware of power relations between stakeholders, and is aware of the risk that interventions can exacerbate already existing conflict dynamics, and tries the best not to do so. And then last important focus of the activities that we're conducting there is also one of the enablers that we identified. And I mentioned before, capacity development. Focus on trainings, focus on bringing people together. That is in itself a very strong kind of dialogue building and trust building and cooperation building focus. And we worked a lot with young people, so with schools, with the universities, bringing together from different countries that would normally not be that at ease speaking to each other, but young people are, and it's a great kind of starting point to build trust and cooperation, and then scale it up to the more political level, again, in the long term. I'll stop here.
Thank you so much for sharing very concrete steps, starting from the community, gathering data, to having an inclusive dialogue, and thank you for highlighting the role of including youth. I really appreciate that. So now I will turn to Ken. So can you also share with us some of the lessons that can guide scaling restoration for peace building? Thank you.
Thank you. You were talking to me and you were looking at the other presenter, so I was confused. Thank you. I think there are a number of things that are important to look at when reflecting on peace and security with regards to landscape restoration. And our experience stems from areas where conflict have been experienced largely. And these conflicts are as a result of territorial conflicts, which are intra and inter-community. And the concept that has been applied seeks for a deeper understanding of the communities themselves, their governance structures, their structures, and linking these to relevant policies and laws that are there. But having one side in your mind that even though laws and policies exist, these conflicts still are there. So the question is, why are they there? And that's why the approach is not the conventional peace-building conflict management, but the approach is understanding how communities, the relationship. So defining the relationships amongst and within the different communities is one thing that has been significant to us. But the second thing is understanding what constitutes a community. Because when you're doing the conventional peace building, sometimes you hear terms like, peacemakers or conflict creators or, something like that. But there are different segments because a community is made up of all these people, all the people, people with disability, the youth, the women, and each one of them has a role. So understanding these roles is something that has been quite important, and that's why when you apply a process such as participatory rangelands management, where there is the negotiation, first of all, understanding the dynamics that underpin the communities, the community as an institution, but also the community as a framework of existence and a framework of use and a framework of engagement between and amongst themselves. And that their resources that they depend on also are not just confined within a certain community, but it also goes across communities. So the transboundary nature of resources that are being used are also things that you needed to do, to analyze. And that's why when you're doing resource assessment and understanding this, it is really important. So one, understanding the kind of resources and how they are being used. Two, understanding the nexus between traditional institution, the traditional governance systems, and the formal or statutory frameworks. And three, what is the demand when it comes to inclusion exclusion conversation? So again, understanding how the totality of a society and the community is very important. Thank you.
Thank you so much for highlighting while policies exist, but you also highlighted the significant need to understand the dynamic of the community. So thank you so much for that. And now we will turn to Mohsen. Can you share with us some of the lesson to scale resortation for peace building?
Thank you. Just on this, one of the initiatives, CGIAR initiative, which we are working on, fragility, conflict, and migration, I will just share some of the learnings from that one. And then I think the important thing is that when we are, we need to look for the system level perspective when we are talking about that one holistic approach, where we are talking about one is top down, other is coming up a bottom up approach, okay? And typically when we are talking, I will just further extend what Ken mentioned, we need to quantify the resources available within that one, the hydrological catchment, or within that one, the top down approach I'm talking about. What that means that there is a water system, that one the food system, as well as the energy and as well as the ecosystem which we are talking about what's happening. Within that big picture, you need to look around the land use, land cover, and all the other factors on that one, saying, are we optimally using the resources? Which major part of the time when we are talking about landscape restoration, these are not. They are the thing. That one is then we need to think about that one, what kind of policy or what kind of intervention we are doing at the top scale level. That needs some engagement with the political elite, with the political willingness and political economy and else, and saying it, if you want to ultimately make the changes on the ground, what we need to do on making sure that political will is available there. But then the other is most important is on that one, is about the grassroots level, where once you know that one about the biophysical aspect of that one, now the important thing is coming how to mobilize the community, how we could pick up some of the best interventions which are available at the indigenous intervention and seeing how we could adopt it. And that's where the important thing is whether we are talking about the micro catchment, where we are planning the land, water, and as well as the other system as better planning, and saying it, making the ownership and saying this is the community-owned plan. It's not that one the research institute went ahead and then they developed their own plan, but identifying the champion within the community and making sure that these are the one. And one other thing is important that while we are planning the community level, often the common mistake which we are doing it, we are not inclusive. We need to make sure that one, the women and the youth are the important one. And when we engage the youth as a part of that one, that's what we have an example in a couple of projects is, you bring the innovation, you bring the digital technology as a part of that one, And that helps us in getting the evidence-based information as well as getting the information. And with that, the community, which we started at the small scale level, where we are doing certain piloting experiments, but also from the top down, we are trying to bring the political will and everything is that one. And then the last important thing is, when we identify the problem, we develop a solution at a pilot scale, then they bring that one, the other community members, not from that community, but in a neighboring one, that we are training to the farmers, the other groups on that one, they come and then see it. Oh, well, this community has done it with their own resources, while why can't we do it? And that sort of the thing, just a demonstration, the concept and everything, that helps a lot. But then these are the small scale, but then multiplication of these one to the many scale is another example. I will just take one last minute on that one. We did a work on a nature-based solution. And there was a lot of water was going downstream, and then that was creating a flood during the monsoon season. And when we are talking about with the government policymaker, we're saying to them, can we introduce a nature-based solution? And they're saying it's a buzzword. It's a European word. We don't accept it. Then for small lake, 80 by 30 foot, we built it and we injected the groundwater into that one. But one thing we did it, we put all the state-of-the-art instrumentation to monitor how much water comes in, how much water goes ground, and monitor the groundwater table fluctuation and everything. Then brought the policymakers, saying it, hey, look on that one. You are saying it's a buzzword. Brought the advocacy campaign, brought the media, and then that helped us. Then the government was able to mobilize, developing it based on the learning of that one. 1.58 million gallons over a 1 year period of time that the water was stored, and that water was not going downstream and creating flood damages. The government mobilized their own sources and now developed around 300 small nature-based solution structures across the other part of the city. So again, we need to work it on a scientific evidence-based information, but with the ownership of community, and as well as making sure that the findings which are there, how we could translate those findings to the policymakers in their language, not scientific papers, not anything in that one. That's the first and fundamental vital thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mohsen. That was a great overview of a very holistic approach. And thank you so much for also presenting an example from the ground to showcase how is that possible. And thank you. You highlighted many important ideas, starting from bringing the political power, but also working with the community as well as a neighboring community, and also presenting language that people can understand. So thank you for that. And now we will turn to you, Baba. Can you share some of your lesson from your own work? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have many lessons to share, but I will focus on some of them. The first, it will be to make sure to involve all the actors, all the users of resources. For me, I think this is the first step. If you miss this step, you miss the success of these tools. And the second is, as you know, the Sahel is maybe the first area impacted by the climate change. And when we talk about climate change, the result is natural resource is not enough for every user. And when the natural resource is not used, we need to have a good approach for managing these little bit resources. Without a good management, we create conflict. And what about the local convection? One of the lessons I think he play a good role is to make sure to know what is the resources present in the area. And after you know what is the kind of resources and what is the resources who creates the more conflict, you can start to negotiate. When I say negotiate, it's not the partner, the program, or the funding to negotiate, but the negotiation happening with the community. When I say community, is a farmer, is header, is fisherman, is all the community to need to use these resources for their life. And about this, to make sure to respect the traditional management, because in this kind of area, traditional management, traditional power are still present. And when the policymaker come for developing a new approach, when they miss the traditional power, maybe the approach will not success. And to make sure the involving the traditional power is to do a large discussion, involve with all of the community. And finally, I think one lesson who help us to success this approach is to involve youth and women, because in the Mali context, I see the conflict, the farmer-header conflict. The first impacted by this conflict are the youth or the women. And generally, before, when the policymaker plan to have tools to manage the natural resources, they focus only in the men or in the men, and forget the role that can play youth and women. And for me, take account these kind of actors. Don't miss them in the process. Will help us to have a good tool for resource management, and also we contribute to the peace building. Thank you.
Thank you, Baba, for highlighting the importance of traditional knowledge, as well as the importance of bringing youth and women to the table and prioritizing their voices. And this brings me to my second question to the panelists, which is about what actionable recommendation would you prioritize for integrating restoration and peace building into the National Action Program? And of course, as we discussed, achieving land degradation neutrality target. So would you share with us more, how can we prioritize that into the National Action Program?
Yes, really, really good and important question. Maybe I'll build my answer a bit around the recommendations that we put forward in our report as well. So I think 4 points. First of all, build on ongoing initiatives, including those that are carried forward by regional bodies in different regions. So start with the community level, but don't forget the kind of transboundary regional level. Don't reinvent the wheel, and most importantly, work together. Build smart coalitions from different sectors, different actors. Everyone can help. In some contexts, when we talk about conflict-affected context, for example, bring in the humanitarian actors as well, because yes, they come in for the short term, but they can have an impact in the long term, so it's important that they're part of the conversation. Make the case, very important, so make sure that the stories of the work you're doing, the impact is captured and is shared. We know that most of the times, at least, policymakers respond to evidence. So let's gather that evidence, let's share that evidence, and let's use that evidence to elevate this agenda at the national level in the countries where we work, but also in the international level. Let's make sure that it remains alive in fora like these ones, and it's not just a conversation that happens here for 1 hour and a half, and then we all go home and forget about it. And this is key, because for all this to happen and continue to happening, we need finance. And so, of course, the more noise we can make and the more evidence we have also to convince, the big climate funds, private funds, peace-building funds, humanitarian funds to come in and take these initiatives forward, the more likely it is that they will do so. And in the report, there's a couple of more points on how much and what type of finance we need, which I think is important also to keep in mind.
Thank you so much, and I think the report you mentioned is a great resource for everyone here. Thank you also for highlighting many aspects, from finance to building partnership. So thank you so much for that again. And now we will turn again to Ken. Can you share with us some recommendation Thank you.
Thank you. The first one, I'll say the obvious, which is basically there is still need to invest in research and conflict analysis. And I'm not saying this because it's new. It is not new. But I'm saying it because it's still important. And for me, it's important because of two reasons. I think we have never effectively connected the political conflict and resource-based conflict, and vice versa, to understand what influences what. And I am convinced that if we do a proper analysis, conflict analysis, and connect how political conflicts impact resource-based conflict, and take the case of Sudan, for instance, South Sudan, for instance, then I think a lot needs to be done as far as research is concerned. The second thing I think is also still important is we again need to invest in technology. And the use of technology is really important. We have an experience in mapping, a livestock corridor from the upper Nile of Sudan going down to the southern Sudan. And the idea was to identify what are the conflict hotspots, potential conflicts, and the likely to be conflict hotspots, and make technology be the response because of the dynamics of around mobility or response, timeliness in terms of response. And I think this is something that it is worth investing in so that we can make proper use of technology for timely response and intervention. And the third thing for me would be still investing in capacity. And capacity, not only, oftentimes we think capacity is about, those ones who are there, but I think capacity needs to be reciprocal. Capacity for us to understand the community, and capacity for the community to understand us more, so that when we are doing an intervention, then we are not dealing with a cyclical process.
Thank you so much, Ken, for bringing us to the basics, starting from conflict analysis and then reminding us about the importance of investing in technology. So thank you so much for that. And now I will turn to you, Mohsen. Can you share some of the recommendation as well?
My experience in many developing countries, there is a national action program, especially when we are talking about the conflicts area and everything. They have so many plans. And then they are talking about the restoration and everything, and that also need a huge financial resources. How to do it? The way what we have been doing it, let's say, I will give the example of one of the projects which we are doing it. Balochistan is a 50% of the land area of Pakistan. It's quite a complex, but at the same time, it's a volatile due to political instability and many of that thing. And what we did it, we picked up the 4 catchments through the political consultation out of the 18 catchment, where we made sure that we are talking about the demographic factor as well as the ethnicity and everything as a part. Then out of the 4 catchments which we have selected, those are scattered across the different part of the Balochistan. Next thing, we looked around on that one, the resources availability for those catchments, and within those catchments, we selected 8 sub-watersheds. And then when we are selecting the 8 sub-watersheds, we made sure that we are based on the holistic picture, as well as the community consultation, while through the survey baseline information, seeing which are the 8 communities which are willingness to put the effort together and everything. And of course, when you're doing survey, everyone is saying, yes, we'll do everything. But practically, some communities work, some communities don't work it. So now in terms of the out of the 32 what we plan it, we got the 16 one where the communities are working, where we have better plan of how we restore the the landscape and everything through better planning of water sources at the small village level and everything. But the ownership what we got it, that's with the political government from the top, because we went for them and saying it, what you have a national action plan. You don't have resources to implement the national action plan as it is. Can we pick up some of the pilot areas and can we do the intervention at that scale level? And therefore we again mobilize the women farmers, women communities, youth, and introducing small mayas which doesn't need a huge resources available. And then that's how we are able to demonstrate and getting the political willingness and saying it, these are the pilot project. If the government want to do implementing the national action plan, they need to pick up on that one. At least there are pilot successful examples of that one. And with that one, the government need to do further next stage is that the assessment and saying it, what are the other areas, the low hanging fruit, where they can implement it, and eventually that will be helpful to develop a bit more stability. One thing which we have witnessed in the catchment area where we are working and the things are successful, the community, they stopped on the other resource conflicts, and then they start working hard on that one so their livelihood will improve. And that matters a lot. How to take them on board and then make sure that there is a kind of the stability is coming, and stability is coming in the lowland area, in the remote area. Some of this one first fundamental is agriculture, small scale, hobby farming, kitchen gardening, and all that one, that giving them source of income. And then that they start thinking about involving in education, arts, other activities and everything. That's how, to me, it's the question is very important, but we don't have resources, we don't have the multiple billions of dollars, and then there is a lack of willingness as well as how to bring a kind of the pilot projects, pilot thing, and that could be successful and embedding into the policy. But it's important that one, you need to the political elite, especially the bureaucracy from the beginning, and producing those kind of steering committee where you're sharing the finding on a monthly basis, and that's how you're moving on this journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In this conversation, this question of matching between the National Action Program and resources come up a lot. So thank you for providing us a very concrete example with steps that show how can we deal with this. And finally, I come to you, Baba. Can you share with us some recommendation? Thank you.
I can share. Firstly, I think it will be very helpful if the national government sees a success story in scaling up, because they don't need to anytime start a new approach, but they can see what is the success story in scaling up. And however, they need to consider the local issues, because sometimes we haven't the same issues or the same factor of conflict in the same area, because make sure to have to know and to understand the local issues, and that help because that is not possible to apply some approach everywhere. And the second is to use, as say my colleagues can, to use the new technological for raise the awareness for forecasting or for doing something like that. And the third is work on the sustainability. Why work on sustainability? Many approach or many action is founded by program or by project. And when we talk about project, we know that it's just an action with a limited duration. And for help community for help the action to be sustainable, the national government can find what is the best to intervene to help community, so to help community to do the action or to do the restoration or to conduct the tool without every time the finance of a program or of project. And the last is the work on the capacity building, because some of them tool or some of them the approach need knowledge. Traditional knowledge is not sometimes enough to lead this, to manage these tools or to manage this approach. That is the reason why national government can focus in the capacity building, the community capacity building. Thank you.
Thank you, Baba, for highlighting the importance of scaling success stories. And thank you so much for all of our panelists for their insight. Now we would like to hear from you, the audience. We have a QR code that you can scan, and we want to hear more. Can you share with us in one or two words, what do you think is the biggest barrier to achieving peace-building outcome alongside environmental and sustainable development outcomes? So please scan the QR code and share it with us. And meanwhile, also, if you have any question to our panelists, please feel free to ask them, introduce yourself, and just mention which panelist you're addressing the question to. Anyone would like to ask any questions to our panelists? Yes, please.
Can you hear me? Good afternoon. I'm Jérôme Ange-Albert from CARI Association, association working on land degradation issues. So thank you for these very interesting and comprehensive presentations. You have well reflected the stakes and the importance of participatory resource management. I have some implementation-related question. So we know that, unfortunately, depending on the context, the local communities may not be able to implement the good practices that you have presented, I mean, by themselves, starting from the beginning, especially if they are already experiencing some conflictual relationships among the community or maybe between other communities. So from your experience, maybe, for example, from the one in Mali, or the one, if you prefer, who are the key stakeholders that shall be considered to, let's say, implement, lead, or assist the concertation process, to assist the community in this process? And what are the main challenges that you have witnessed in your case study or success stories? Thank you.
Any of the panelists would like to answer?
We are very short on time, so I think we just have time for this one question and response. Sorry for that. Yeah.
Thank you. A number of stakeholders. One is you must target the community and let them build that understanding from the beginning. But then for sustainability, communities alone cannot execute a success story and you expect it to be successful. So an integration and a linkage between community, government, and the stakeholders who are researchers and development partners is quite important. Thank you.
I think it's the same. It's
Yeah?
the same, yeah.
Okay. Did that answer your question? Okay, great. Yes. So if, as Ruby mentioned, we'd like to get your input. So please open the Slido, and we'll take note of your thoughts. And of course, any other questions, we're happy to talk after the session. I want to just pass it off to Cargel for closing remarks to bring this lovely session to a close. Dr. Cargel Masso is the director of CGIAR's Impact Area Platform on Environmental Health and Biodiversity. And he has a wealth of experience, background in soil science and resource management. And he is currently the Secretary General of the African Soil Science Society. So I'm very pleased to pass the word to him for our final remarks.
Thank you very much, Janet, and thanks for all the panelists and the speakers. I think I spent this time really for good reason, because there is a lot of take-home messages. Probably I will not be able to summarize everything because we have a time pressure, but at least there are 3 things that we should probably keep as takeaways. The first thing is, if there is land degradation, or we are talking about land restoration, it's because land has been degraded. And we need to understand the root causes of that land degradation. Sometimes we tend to shift the blame to the climate change, but sometimes they are our anthropogenic actions. And I think most of the discussions was about the anthropogenic actions in communities. So there is a boundaries of the landscape. They could be within countries. They could be also beyond the borders of a given country, where the cooperation becomes very, very critical. Then we all understand from all the options proposed, there was a critical need to make sure that there is inclusivity. So all the key stakeholders involved in the landscape, not only the local communities, but really anyone who's probably earning a bit of livelihood from a given landscape probably need to be involved in the decision-making process. The good thing, really, what I did like also from the panel is to hear that there is land issues, there is soil issues, there is water issues. Those were brought together and see the need of kind of systemic solutions. And the solutions can't be imported solutions. We are looking for solutions that the parties, those who involve, the actors of the landscape, are able to discuss and agree on by understanding what the root causes are, by understanding the power dynamics of the relationships, and try to overcome those. I like the question in terms of really from the audience, in terms of really what makes things work. We can have the goodwill, but there are several limiting factors. How do we understand them? How do we work on those? The knowledge sharing, evidence sharing becomes very critical. Demonstration side to be able to use those becomes very critical. But all in all, when we do wrong moves, there is always a cost associated with it. So there will be a cost associated to make sure that we have good governance. There will be a cost that is associated with the governance itself. How do we make sure that we invest in governance adequately? How do we make sure that we mobilize the resources for the land restoration? I do believe it's a homework that the panelists and all the speakers have given us to make sure that we go and do resource mobilization to make things happen, not only for the technical solutions, but really involving the social solutions that brings community together for everyone to understand that it's a shared resources, and that's why it's integrating the 3 Rio conventions, as the panelists have said. So with this, I will stop here, and probably, Jenny, you still have something to add. Then you can tell us to probably move to another session. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, no, nothing to add. Just a big thank you all for joining us, the panelists and speakers. Really such a pleasure to have you guys all here together. And I hope everybody leaves the session inspired to take these ideas forward. And if you'd like to know more about these interventions and approaches, I invite you to check out the CGIAR position paper focused on peace with nature that was recently published. And as well, keep an eye out for a brief that will come from the session today. So thank you guys. Thank you all very much. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening.